Hi everybody, I am Julia Anchorhaven and this is a disclosure diary episode. I'm making this diary today on the 18th of March 2026 because I'm researching for a book that I'm writing about my experiences from going an ordinary person living in the UK to a backpacker traveling around the world to eventually coming back to the UK with spiritual awakening and starting to discover that there was a lot more going on behind the scenes that I realised as a military abductee and as a survivor of the secret space program, super soldier programs. So as I started to do the research, I was looking into my time in Australia where I had some unusual encounters that really did stay with me. So as I look back at them now, I realised that they were abductions, and I'm starting to get the context on it, and I've had a bit of a breakthrough, which is why it's important that I document this straight away. As I do this, I can feel a pressure building at the back of my head, which is not good. So I'm going to jump right in. So I flew into Brisbane and we were working for conservation volunteers for 6 weeks, kind of majority of it was working around Brisbane and a little bit north. So as far as I'm aware, the furthest north I went was Malini. But I did work near Australia Zoo and there was a nature reserve nearby there that I was working. So I have flashback nightmares about my time around Malini, and I have a missing time experience working in that nature reserve, so that kind of piqued my interest. So I was writing about my experience, and then I went on YouTube just for a break afterwards, and I opened up the Imagination podcast, which I don't watch very often, and there was an Australian lady talking about her whistleblowing experiences, and her name, I've got it written down, is Fiona Barnett. So Fiona said quite a few things in that episode, which was season 6, episode 48, if you want to go and check that out. And it made me really think about, okay, I can see some associations here that I would never have made before without Fiona's information. So after I was working for the volunteer project north of Brisbane, we started to go south, but it was always my intention to go north, to go up to Fraser Island, and I'd actually won some tickets to like a boating trip, which was stolen out of my bag, right? So when an opportunity came up to go to Sydney for the volunteer project, they needed so many people on a project in Sydney, my mind said, go for it. And that wasn't really my decision. I know that was programming now as I look back at it, and I have a memory that is very clear and very hard to write about, so I'm not going to go into detail, but I was based in a showground area which was very close to an abattoir, and I know I've had an abduction experience in that the time there. But what I started to look into from Fiona's words was that she was talking about Australia and the Mkultra projects. She was talking about Operation Matchbox, which I don't know much about, but it's come out of the United Kingdom. She was talking about people coming from the UK to Australia, to Sydney specifically, and she made reference to particular buildings. And she was talking about how they were doing the mind fracture process, and this was the really bad torturous techniques that they were using. This definitely wasn't anything anything good. It was really harsh. They were creating MK Delta soldiers, super soldiers. They were creating sex pots, honey pots, sex kittens, all that kind of stuff. So, but she linked it to the CSIRO, the Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organization. So I'm just going to call it CIRO because I'm not sure how you meant to say that. But she linked it to Mkultra and that there were labs at Pine Gap in Australia. Now, I've already done a couple of videos where I talk about Pine Gap and how I've got memories of being in a lab facility there, and I've done remote viewing on it with Sean Bond and Christy Campbell. Okay, so we know also that there's it's a multi-agency base, Pine Gap, and that it's much larger than you can imagine. Okay, so she talks about so Fiona Barnett talks about how it's a CIA base as well. It's linked to CIA globally. Okay, so this Commonwealth Scientific Industrial Research Organization, the CIRO, this is what ties everything together. So I am British, and yet I have memories of being in projects that were in Canada and America, that were in India and Australia, that were in places like a British overseas territory like Diego Garcia, a naval base. So I am British, and what ties this all together is this Commonwealth program. Okay, so I started to do some research, and I'm right at the beginning of my research, so please forgive me. I've not gone too deeply into it because it's quite difficult and it's just sparking things in my mind, which is why I think it's important to document it as I go to ensure that nothing happens to me while I'm documenting this process. I do undergo mind wipes, I get redirected. I've literally noted, I've made this association with 3 people, so 3 people know I'm doing this research, and I know that might sound like I'm being a bit kind of overly cautious, but this is big, this is really important. So this agency is what's basically linking together the UK, India, Canada, Australia, South Africa, Malaysia. These are all linked together in programs because of this Commonwealth Scientific Industrial Research Organisation, CIRO, which is an Australian government agency that works with the American agencies, UK agencies, India, and even Japanese agencies are all involved in this one tie-up right here. Okay, so this is the first time I'm looking into it, but there's also reference to an Air Force base, which I've written down, which was quite close to where I believe I was working when I had that missing time experience, and it was the Holsworthy Air Force Base, which Fiona notes is kind of like a multi-level facility that has labs. Okay, so there's that kind of south of Sydney connection there as well at Holsworthy Air Force Base. Okay, so the CIRO labs at Pine Gap, but they also have 50 offices all over the world, which are also in America as well. So I'm just going to get up a little bit of information about them. Because what surprised me about them was they were actually formed in the 1920s, but they've changed their name over time and legislation has changed around them. So CIRO manages a number of collections of programs, you know, which go into so many different things like national culture, living Australia, tree seeds, fish collections, insects, herbarium. They go into minerals and infrastructure, agriculture and environmental analysis, biological, food and medical sciences, animal health laboratories. So this organisation started in 1915 and it has evolved a lot. So you can do your own research into how it's changed its name multiple times, how it's brought in so many different people and different catalysts. It's got lots of achievements, it's noted here, so it looks very notable, and it does historic research. You know, CIRO owns the first computer in Australia, CSIRAC, built as part of a project began in Sydney Radio Physics Lab in 1947. The CSIR-MK1 ran its first program in 1949. So there's a lot of different areas that's involved in, you know, even the dung beetle project it was involved in. It was involved in a weight loss project as well, which was the total wellbeing diet. So CIRO gained worldwide attention and criticism for promoting a high protein, low carbs diet called the Total Wellbeing Diet in 2005. So they're literally getting themselves into all areas of society. Okay, they've got numerous patents as well. Which is just really, it's just, yeah, and they get into fuel, they get into so many different things, wheat trials, censorship, you know. There's a lot of things that go on with this organisation. So, but we know from Fiona's testimony, Fiona Barnett, that it is linked into the Mkultra programs, that it is linked into multi-facility bases across the globe. So I started to dig a little bit further, and she noted in her video that about the Enstone nuclear reactor, which is a base. There's actually like a bunker that is near Chipping Norton in Oxfordshire, and when I looked at the map, it is very, very close to the Rollright Stones, which Maria Wheatley and Miles Johnston have been doing investigation into recently, and they've been testing the radiation on it, you know, the energetic output of those stones. Now we are talking very, very close. So Enstone nuclear area. That's 3.5 hours drive from me. And Fiona goes on to say that there's a 20-story underground lab facility right there, 3.5 hours from me, right? And from my experience, I have been placed in areas that have high radiation because I have an ability that does seem to be able to offset some of the radiation. So when I was looking into this and I saw the proximity to where I was, I knew immediately that yes, I've been to that facility. I mean, the rollright stones are amazing. Yeah, so anyway, so I started to look into the Commonwealth and what that meant, and I pulled up a map about the Commonwealth and was quite surprised. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Commonwealth. 1 second, let me get that page up. So it really surprised me. So I'm just going to go on to Wikipedia for now. They do have their own website. So Commonwealth of Nations. So I remember when I was living in India and I needed to get a new passport, and my son needed to get his passport, and you know, because my son was born out there, and they'd never. They knew that it was Commonwealth, that the UK and India were tied together, but the passport office weren't used to seeing like a person from me, like of actual UK origin, British origin. So they asked me some of the weirdest questions when I was there. So the Commonwealth of Nations, often referred to as the British Commonwealth or simply the Commonwealth, is an international association of 56 member states, which are former territories of the British Empire, connected through their use of English language and their cultural and historical ties. Now, what I'm suggesting is that they're connected in these secret space programs and in these trafficking programs and other things like that. That's what I'm suggesting right now. So that when I made that decision to go from the UK to Australia, Australia to New Zealand, New Zealand to India, right, that I was actually traded between these factions. Yeah, I was literally just an asset that was grounded in a Commonwealth program, and I could be switched around from program to program. Yeah, so I went to Australia, I'm pretty sure for cloning. Sean Bond and I have talked about that before, that when I was near Sydney I was abducted and I was taken for cloning, and then versions of me work in Pine Gap facility now. Generally about 5 versions of me are there. Are used for many different things. So the Commonwealth dates back to the first half of the 20th century with the decolonisation of the empire through the increased self-governance of its territories. It was created as the British Commonwealth of Nations through the Balfour Declaration at the 1926 Imperial Conference. So when we look back to Ciro and when that was formed, if I can find the information, it was very early on. So, bear with me. In 1915, this suggested an advisory council of science and industry in Australia. Okay, so they were starting to create their own governing system, and a few of the other countries were doing the same. And eventually, the Commonwealth had to be put in place because people just didn't want to be ruled by the British Empire anymore. Anyway. So there was a London Declaration allowing India to remain in the Commonwealth Republic. Okay, when I pulled out the map of Commonwealth countries, so yes, there's the United Kingdom. It no longer includes Southern Ireland. I think at one point it was a member state, and it isn't anymore. And then, of course, you've got India, Pakistan, and the areas around there. So we have got Bangladesh, and that's a big part of India. We've got Sri Lanka. Now, I've lived in India and I visited Sri Lanka at least 3 or 4 times. Then we come down to Malaysia, which I've visited multiple times. You've got Australia and New Zealand. Okay, there's lots of small islands like Norfolk Island, Vanuatu, Fiji, just checking, Tonga, Samoa, Tuvalu, Kiribati, Nauru. Not even heard of these places. There's loads of little islands here dotted around. What's this one? Christmas Island, Cos, Keeling Islands, Maldives Republic, and then you've got Seychelles, Mauritius, and then there's a strange little dot saying British Indian Ocean Territory. It's actually marking where Diego Garcia base is, and I know that for a fact. So, okay, and then when I move over to Africa, so in the Commonwealth, so we've got Namibia, Botswana, South Africa, Mozambique, Zambia, Tanzania, Kenya, Uganda. Zimbabwe is no longer part of the Commonwealth. So Saint Helena, Ascension and Tristan da Cunha is marked on the map, and it looks like it could be a base because it's in the same colour as what I'd associate Diego Garcia. And then we come up here to Gabon, Cameroon, Nigeria, Togo, Ghana, Sierra Leone, Gambia. So these are all still in the Commonwealth. Then I've got another 2 small islands, Cyprus, Malta. Now we know Malta, I've just done a video with John Whitberg about the nefarious things that go on there. Okay, and that he believed he was taken there as a child. And when we go across the other side of the map, looking for Commonwealth countries, we've got, so this is South America area, so we've got Guyana, Trinidad and Tobago, Grenada, Barbados, St. Lucia, Dominica, Antigua and Barbuda, St. Kitts and Nevis, Jamaica, Bahamas, and then there's these little blue islands again, the Cayman Islands. So why that is a different colour, it doesn't say on this key, there's no key. Turks and Caicos Islands, Bermuda, Anguilla, don't know how you say that, Virgin Islands, and Montserrat. Now Montserrat, there's a few different places that I know are kind of nefarious. So we've got Gibraltar there, we've got Jersey, Guernsey, and Isle of Man. So they're still kind of noted as being part of the territory. And then you've got the whole of Canada. The whole of Canada. I'm just checking some of the remote areas to see if it's still Canada. So I'm not very familiar. Yep, the whole, so massive, Canada, Jesus. So Canada is still part of the Commonwealth. So from my perspective right now, what I'm noting is that as a British super soldier who knows that I was in the Monarch project, Project Phoenix, that I was in Monarch and Kruger, and that I was traded around in cross-faction rotations, as Drago Reed says, I am putting the point of view out there that I was based in a Commonwealth program, and that is why I was used in so many different programs. So I know I was used in American and Russian programs as well, which was not directly linked into the Commonwealth, looking at this map. But I was Indian SSP for living out there for 10 years, time dilated for a very long time. And when I look at this map, the only places I haven't really visited are Africa and some of the smaller islands, you know. There was an area of France I was expecting to see noted in blue, but it's not noted there, which is interesting. Anyway, so getting back to the Enstone nuclear reactor facility. So that's in central England, near Oxfordshire, 3.5 hours from me, near a standing stone or a couple of standing stones. So the Rollright, which tell you a bit about the Rollright stones. It's an ancient site located on the Oxfordshire and Warwickshire border in England. The complex consists of 3 main elements: the King's Men Stone Circle, the King's Stone, and there's another one. Just find that. Just checking their website. So Maria Wheatley is the expert on this kind of thing, the Whispering Knights, yeah. So she's the expert and she's done plenty of videos, and she's recently been doing some technical analysis of the output that's coming from the stones. Now what I'm proposing at this point is that, knowing that that Enstone nuclear facility is there, and that it looks like it's a bunker on the surface, but below, Fiona's saying that there's a 20-story underground lab facility. So I'm proposing that the Rollright stones have technology beneath the surface that this nuclear facility is tapping into, because there was a very, very high output of energy coming from these stones, much higher than Maria Wheatley was expecting. So this shows that it is an active ancient nuclear facility. I think I might have to go and do some boots on the ground investigation on this. But yeah, so I'm making the association based on what Fiona Barnett was saying about MK Ultra projects coming to Australia. being linked into UK projects as well, and it is the CSIRO that seems to be connecting these things with the super soldiers who, like me, have gone from the UK, Australia, New Zealand to India, Canada, and all these other places. It is linked in a Commonwealth program. So I'm not sure if anyone else has been talking about that. So I'd just like to put that out there. It's the 18th of March 2026. I will be looking into this in a deeper way. But when we look at the CSIRO, which is the Australian facility of the organisation, rather, of the Commonwealth Scientific Industrial Research Organisation, so which I'm calling CIRO, they have 50 locations. Let me try and see. I couldn't get all the information about the locations. They have an annual budget of $1 billion, and that was in 2024. $1 billion. Ooh, they really have their fingers in many pies. I'm just going to try and find where it said about the 50 different locations. But there was one in France, and I think it was Montpellier, which we've been kind of looking into recently for ancient site as well. So 50 sites across Australia and France, Chile, and the United States of America, employing about 5,500 people. So CIRO has expanded its activities since 1949 to almost every field of primary, secondary, and tertiary industry, including environment, human nutrition, conservation, urban and rural planning, and water. It works with the leading organisations around the world, maintains more than 50 sites across those stations that I've talked about. So yeah, so this is quite interesting, and it does tie together the fact that there is super soldier programs and secret space programs in Australia. We already know that Pine Gap is a multi kind of 3-letter agency base, okay, and even the ACIO have made references on some of their videos that they are based in Pine Gap, or they have a base in Pine Gap. And I've heard that on a few videos when I was listening to the ACIO. Okay, so yeah, so just so you guys know that this is what I'm looking into, that my connection to my year in Australia, which was probably time dilated, is a lot deeper than I was originally thinking. So I had a few experiences, and then I've looked at it twice on videos with Sean Bond and Christy Campbell, but we've primarily focused on Pine Gap, Australia. And I did get Sean to look around Sydney, but he didn't pick up on anything at the time. But I'm going to go back and re-watch that video. However, sometimes there's a level of cloaking involved, or sometimes Sean doesn't always let me see everything because it's too dangerous. Okay, he does that kind of thing occasionally for our own safety, because we're doing live shows as well. We do live shows, so there may be things that we want to look into behind the scenes, and that he'll go off and do that work separately. But Indigo Angel and Felix Hyde did do a video remote viewing Sydney and an underground base there. I think it was in the Blue Mountains. I'm not too sure on my geography for Australia. But yeah, so when I looked at the Wikipedia page for the CSIRO, and I look at the names, there's some names there that catch my attention. There's familiar names like Charles Allen. And Charles Allen was a geophysicist, so some of you might be familiar with his name. It's just weird how his name just kind of jumped out at me, and I feel there's a bit of pressure coming in as I talk about that. So yeah, so please do your own research. You know, don't believe me, don't listen to me. Always do your own research. If it resonates with you, go deeper if you feel safe to do so. This is my truth. This is my disclosure diary. I am in the process of recovering my memories from the last 50 years. Okay, so yeah, so thank you for watching my video, and hope that makes sense. And as I do my research, it'll get more and more clear, to the point that I can write that as testimony in my book once I've made the correct associations. So I don't claim to be an expert on these topics. I'm literally finding my way. I'm doing my own debrief process, trying to deprogram and defrag my mind, basically, and break down compartments and tune into my alters, integrate what's healthy, and release back things to my oversoul that are not healthy. All of these things, these covert government military programs, ET, on and off planet programs, they are all grounded in trauma. There is nothing good about these programs. What's important now is we focus on the truth. We focus on how we can prove and make these connections and start talking about it as much as we possibly can. So thank you so much. I am Julia Anchorhaven. You can check my website, anchorhaven.co.uk, check my debrief page, and check my Anchorhaven Origins playlist here on YouTube to learn a little bit more about me. Thanks very much.